Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
The second topic is I asked you to listen to this Cody Rhodes on Bill Simmons interview, specifically about the conversation surrounding AEW and him leaving AEW. What did you gather from his comment about feeling disrespected, not naming Tony Khan,
Not once.
and kind of like saying, I met with Vince and Bruce, and I still didn't think I was going there. I still thought I was going to stay with AEW, but feeling disrespected. Like, it's one thing feeling disrespected by this corporate entity, but it's another thing being disrespected by something I helped create.
Actually, I could be wrong, but I think he didn't say I helped create. I think he said
I created.
Yeah. That's what he said. Okay. So Jeff and I had a conversation about this Jeff Hawkins, who, when we did one of our retro editions of the Dynamite show, where we look back on, I think it was the disastrous December 18th, 2019 episode where Tony Khan just had to, get rid of everybody else and do all the creative himself because he wasn't happy with it. And we talked about Brandy, and we didn't remember how big a part of the show she was. And also what was very notable was the announcers, and not just JR, because JR will shit on anything. All of the announcers were like burying Brandy and her angle. And that thing had no chance. Like, regardless of the fact that it was terrible, whether you think that or not, and most people did, the fact is that they had no chance of succeeding. So I think what happened, Jeff and I both came to the same conclusion that a lot of what happened with Cody had to do with Brandy, and the fact that she was being sabotaged by the announcers. So anything she did, she wasn't going to have a chance of succeeding. And there was some good stuff she did, like, the stuff I remember with Dan Lambert, but he buried her too. And then with the Shaq, when she was supposed to wrestle in that match with Shaq, but then she got pregnant. So I think it was Red Velvet stepped in for her, but she had that famous line, "Who told you it was open mic night, bitch," or something. And yeah, so all that stuff. And so I think what happened was when they came around for renewals, Tony was, he was probably going to sign her to do whatever she was doing behind the scenes. She was she called the
brand ambassador,
the Brandy ambassador. And Cody, obviously he would have been giving him a deal, or maybe just picking up his option. But then, part of the negotiations may have been, you know what? Yeah, we want you, but we don't want your wife. And
okay, but that tells me, though,
yeah,
that Tony isn't smart.
Or the fact is, Tony on his side didn't think he needed Cody anymore.
That is the other thing, because I think Tony is smart,
right?
So if he knew that Brandy was persona non grata, he had to have known that Cody would not take that.
And who else was in that company at the time Cody left, who had just shown up and was more or less the shiny new toy, and everybody loved him at the time? CM Punk.
Was he there, or was he on his way? I don't even remember the time.
No, he was there.
Okay.
So Cody left in early 22, and that Punk came in September 21. So he was still at the height. He was in the middle of that MJF feud when Cody left. Like, that was the height of his popularity, and the height of AEW's popularity, really. And so in his mind, and I think if you go back to 2019, obviously Tony needed Cody in some ways, but if in 2019 Punk was available, but he wasn't interested in going there, if he could have had Punk instead of Cody, I think Tony would have taken Punk. Like, if it was a choice between Tony and Punk in 2019. In 2022, it may have been a choice where he said, "Hey, I have Punk, I don't need Cody." Okay, that may be. I don't know that. And that could also be playing into what happened with the Elite and Punk, where all of a sudden now we got problems with Hangman. We got problems with the Bucks, who were friends with Cody. I don't know.
The Brandy conversation has to be a part of this, I think. she is very adamant that he tells this story, seemingly. Like, I think she wants the story to be out. So we have heard that. We have heard the Brandy piece of this. And I have always kind of, like, my defense to that is Tony Khan is too smart to create that fight. You could always find something for Brandy to do. You could do what he's done to other people and say, okay, you're going to do this, and then they disagree, and then you send them home, right? Like, this is a thing with him. So that's the part where I balk when it comes down to Brandy, though I got to imagine some of it has to be with her involved.
Well, you talk about finding something for her to do. Like, he may have offered her a job, but he just didn't want her on screen. And he didn't, and maybe Cody and Brandy both at that time thought she had a lot to offer on screen and wanted her on screen, and that could have been part of it.
But she could simply just be a valet. And like you said, she was pregnant. She's gonna have, she has a baby. Yep. She's not going to be there all the time because she's going to want to take care of her baby. Maybe the baby comes out on the road with them and stuff, but her responsibilities would have to be less just because she is now going to be a mother.
Yeah, but not doing it and being told we don't want you to do it, those are two different things.
But you got to be savvier than that. Yeah, you got to be able to have this conversation in a way that makes people feel good about it.
So Tony is smart enough that maybe he thought about it, played the chess game, and said, okay, I'm going to tell him this, and he's probably going to leave, and I'm okay with that.
Okay, so the other part of this, and this is something that I have firsthand knowledge of because I did those interviews with Tony Khan and Dave. And around the time, and we did a few of them, so I'm conflating things, right? I don't even remember the time frame of this. I had felt just by having these conversations on air and just sort of shooting the stuff, I felt that Tony himself was not getting enough of the credit of what was happening. And Cody was kind of given more credit than maybe he deserved in certain things. And I remember thinking like, oh, like they don't mind Cody taking the credit necessarily because he's so good at the media stuff. And he is the most, I guess, second or third most well-known person behind Jericho and Moxley. And so that's a face and that's a name. And thus you kind of let him do the media. He's great about it. But when the interviewers are like, yeah, when you created this thing and when you did this part of creative and Tony's in the back thinking like, that's actually not him. That's probably me or whatever. I sensed right then and there that, okay, like as long as things are good, this is cool. But when things are not good, this might not be cool. Mm-hmm. And so you remember when Tony decided that he was going to take over creative. And he was going to be the single person in creative, right? Mm-hmm. And at that time, by him taking the reins, what it also said is, you, Kenny Omega, you, Young Bucks, you, Cody, like, I'm the guy when it comes to this stuff, not you guys. And I always thought that Cody saw himself like his dad. He's talent, but he's also kind of running the show. And so when you take that away from him, and look, I don't know exactly what each person were doing, but I also know, like, behind the scenes in the Elite, just the four of those dudes, like, they weren't always getting along. There was some frustration and stuff along the way, but that's natural. That's startup stuff. Like, that's normal. I've been in lots of moments like that where these people that you love so much and you bring together and you create this thing, and then you have a difference of opinion. Then it's like, who's got the most power? Who's got the biggest voice? Who's going to, throw the biggest fit? So all of those things were happening at this time. And I always wondered if Cody was going, because, Cody's personality, he's kind of I've only met him in person like two, three, 4 times. Like, so it's not a ton, right? But my gauge of it was Brandy's fucking cool. And Cody's kind of a square. Like that was my interpretation of them.
He's kind of like, I mean, I've never met him, but I've followed his whole career. He comes off as just like a regular, like a wrestling fan, like just a wrestling fan. And especially like when you listen, like in that interview, and I'll tell people, if you haven't listened to it, I would recommend it, because
I thought he came off really well in that interview, by the way.
He did, but
sounded like he was like a cool dude to hang out with.
It's a different Cody though. Like right away, it's the first thing I noticed. His voice was different. Like he didn't have that put on voice that he normally has when he's on TV, or even at a press conference, or even on a media junket like he used to do in AEW. Like this just sounded like, man, if you're just hanging out with Cody, this is kind of what it would have sounded like. And he seemed very comfortable. But then at some point in the interview, he mentioned that he had been asked by an interviewer at one point. He said the name and I can't remember who it was, who asked
Chris
him
Van
the scare.
Vliet.
Yeah, Chris Van Vliet, you're right. He asked him the scariest question he's ever been asked, and it was like, "Are you ever not working?" And he said, like, I don't even know at this point, because I've been doing this for so long. Like, and it got me to thinking, like, all these, like, and he took some criticism for some of his opinions and some of the stuff he said, like particularly the Montreal screw job and all that. And I believe him. Like, I think this is what he actually thinks.
See, I just think he's a dork when he says stuff like that.
Yeah. And even when he's talking about Unreal, like he's talking about, oh man, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
Like he's just like, that might be promotion, or it might be how he really feels. Like he kind of wants to see this because he wants to see how stuff is put together. And every time they brought up Shawn Michaels and the things he did, he's like, oh, is that him, or is he just working?
He explained who he is, though. He said Dusty treated him like a child. He overprotected the hell out of him. Yeah. And so like that explained a lot, if you understand.
And Dusty,
Cody.
It sounded like Dusty worked him constantly. So he probably never had any idea what was real and what wasn't.
But at the same time, I do think he came across as very cool. In that interview. That's why I thought it was a great.
But I do get the nerdy stuff like you talk about too, because he shows up and he's always wearing his 3-piece suit, and he's walking his dog, and and I'm sure with his kid, he's just like, okay, what, I can't remember her name, but he probably dresses her and be polite, say thank you,
So ultimately. My takeaway is, if he ever talks about this, I think his side and I think Tony's side are going to be a little bit different. But I think he truly believes that he was sold a little bit of a bill of goods about what AEW was going to be. And he decided that if I'm just going to be a wrestler, I might as well just be a wrestler on the other side, because I can make an impact by using my AEW name. Mm-hmm. And
I also think that he opened this door, and he mentioned it a couple times in the interview. I think he opened this door because he wants people to buy his book, because he talked about
if it comes out.
Yeah. Well, he said, I'm thinking about writing a book, and then and then he talks about AEW for the first time. So
okay, I told Dave, I said he's writing this book, and Dave goes, well, he's not going to tell the story. And I go, well, then he can't write the book, because the book's going to be bullshit. And he's like, you're right. He's got to tell the story if he's going to write the book. But he agreed with Tony Khan. And if Tony Khan, if they go against it, then Tony Khan's going to have to come out with his side.
And he agreed. But is there paperwork? Did he sign anything? Or is it
handshake agreement, brother?
Yeah. Yeah. And if that's the case, I mean, I'm not saying Cody is distrustful or anything, but I mean, obviously if he opens that door, then Tony can come back and say, but I think Cody's smart enough politically that he's not going to bury Tony, but he may be a little more honest than what he has been so far. Tony can
do you think not mentioning Tony's name is a WWE thing? Like, you cannot say this man's name, or do you think Cody did that specifically because he's frustrated with him?
I will go back to, I think Cody is so ingrained in that WWE system that he just probably wouldn't say the name because of the fact that like they wouldn't say it on TV. So it's not even a conscious thing that he's doing. He just doesn't want to say. He's okay with saying Kenny Omega and the Bucks because even occasionally they get mentioned in WWE. Although, I mean, there was times like he never once said Paul Heyman. He always called him Mr. Heyman, which I found very interesting. It was kind of weird almost. Maybe go back to the dork thing. Yeah. But yeah, I think it was I think it was a subconscious thing where he didn't mention Tony Khan because he never even really talked about Tony without saying his name. Like it was all him and the Bucks and Kenny. Like, and he didn't mention Hangman either. And he was one of the key guys at the beginning too. But yeah, so I don't think it was that. It was more just that he didn't really, probably in his brain, just won't say the name because it's just not something you do when you're in WWE.